My parents tried to steal my grandfather's house and humiliate me online. But one hidden video destroyed them in court. Before the real craziness of the workday starts, the morning commute usually delivers a peaceful routine. I'm Natalie Harper, a 31-year-old woman who never thought her own family could turn on her with such brutality. That day, when I was on the train to work, my sister left me a frigid message on my vibrating phone. "Goodbye. Everything is in the trash," was the nasty notification that flashed across my luminous screen. Before I could even comprehend those vile words, another notification showed up in our family group chat. A picture of my entire clothing and personal stuff haphazardly dumped into a dirty trash can was recently emailed by my mother. When my father casually responded to that same photo with a bright red heart emoji a second later, it was the height of their malice. I just grinned with a weird sense of relief rather than sobbing in the middle of a packed train car. At last, they had taken off their courteous masks and feigned affection to show their cunning faces. I inhaled deeply before opening the family chat and uploading a 4:2-second video that I had painstakingly created 4 days prior. I shut my screen after the upload was complete and gazed out the window at the blurry city skyscrapers. My phone started ringing constantly a few minutes later. The same folks who had just thrown my life in the trash started making 63 terrified calls. Their abrupt urgency was unmistakable evidence that my legal trap had closed flawlessly. Read this story through to the conclusion and leave your comments below if you have ever experienced betrayal or undervaluation from those closest to you. Because often being silent is the first step in a strong comeback rather than a sign of weakness. I was called to a stuffy family gathering in my own living room 9 days prior to getting that cruel SMS. My sister Brooke Harper pouted in the corner armchair while her parents sat rigidly on the old flowered sofa with their arms folded across their chests. Until Dad cleared his voice to deliver their well-considered decision, the oppressive quiet in the room felt almost palpable. He coldly said that the historic Charleston home I currently occupied was officially theirs while staring me in the eyes. They asserted with assurance that my grandfather had died too soon to leave a will or testament that could be enforced by law. Their perverted view of the law meant that the next of kin automatically inherited the lucrative property, giving them complete control over how it was used in the future. Mom jumped in right away to offer their final defense before I could even comprehend the utter ridiculousness of their unfounded accusation. Her expression, which was completely reserved for her favorite child, was one of genuine sympathy as she leaned forward. Mom clarified that Brooke Harper was currently experiencing a major emotional breakdown and had recently finalized her divorce following a disastrously brief marriage. They maintained that in order for my sister to fully recover and reconstruct her utterly destroyed life, she vitally required the roomy and comfortable setting of this particular home. In order to accommodate her extremely delicate mental state, I was therefore required to collect my possessions and leave the premises right away. While our parents handled the unpleasant task of moving me, Brooke Harper simply sat there wiping her dry eyes with a tissue. As I listened to their obvious favoritism masquerading as a holy family obligation, a feeling of incredulity and intense rage swept over me. I set my feet firmly on the hardwood floor and resolutely refused to consider such a ridiculously irrational request. I turned my intense look back to my parents after staring at Brooke Harper, who was portraying the ideal sad victim. My voice quivering from deeply repressed anger, I said, "You all totally ignored my grandfather during his final years of battling severe illness while I was the one spoon-feeding him and managing his daily medications. Conveniently, they had forgotten that they had never bothered to call or even come see him when he most needed their consolation." I firmly reminded them that because they were constantly too busy attending to Brooke Harper's never-ending dramatic life events, I had given up my youth and personal time to be his only committed caregiver. My parents didn't seem to feel any real shame as a result of my perfectly reasonable arguments. Instead, they seemed to become extremely defensive. The glass coasters rattled loudly against the polished hardwood coffee table when Dad slapped his huge fist down on it. He pointed a demanding finger at me and yelled, "You will not speak to your mother or me with such gross disrespect under any circumstances." Mom supported him right away, using her parental authority as a cruel weapon to fully subjugate me. She sternly informed me that if I persisted in my willful defiance, they would not think twice about using extreme legal steps to forcibly evict me from the property. They made it very evident that making sure Brooke Harper had a safe, secure space to grieve over her lost love was far more important than my years of selfless devotion. There was no space for a calm conclusion because of the abject harshness of their callous ultimatum, which hung heavy in the stuffy air of the living room. The discussion ended there, creating an irreversible gap that destroyed any remaining fondness I might have had for my parents. I became aware of a very unpleasant reality about my true role in this really toxic home as I looked at their resolute faces. They used family blood as a convenient and manipulative tool to further my sister's incredibly self-centered agenda. Without giving them the joy of witnessing my tears or saying another pointless word of protest, I discreetly got out of my chair. Leaving them was like leaving behind a lifetime of false hope of unwavering parental love. Ignoring the intense drive simmering beneath my seemingly placid demeanor, they stupidly assumed my silent exit was a defeated submission. 5 days later, I walked warily into a very quiet legal practice, tucked away in the old quarter on a cobblestone street. Only the steady ticking of an old grandfather clock reverberated through the dimly lit waiting area as the hefty oak door closed off the cacophonous traffic outside. I had come here to see Mr. Whitaker, a well-respected lawyer in the city who had previously represented my late grandfather. Just a few days before our planned encounter, this dignified gentleman had unexpectedly contacted me via a securely encrypted phone call. His extremely private communication style made it clear right away that whatever we were going to talk about needed to be kept completely private and out of my parents' prying eyes. Mr. Whitaker nodded solemnly at me and pointed to a luxurious leather chair just across from his enormous mahogany desk. He took his time opening his top desk drawer with purposeful care, rather than hurrying to explain the perplexing circumstances surrounding the hotly contested estate. While keeping very serious eye contact, he stealthily took out a small silver USB drive and laid it lightly on the polished hardwood surface between us. To highlight the indisputable seriousness of the matter, the elderly lawyer leaned forward and placed his wrinkled hands on the desk. In a low voice, he said that this small storage device included a highly classified movie that was precisely 42 seconds long. My grandfather had personally recorded this tape in complete secrecy just days before his untimely death. Mr. Whitaker's tone was remarkably strict, his piercing gray eyes displaying a fierce, unwavering dedication to protecting the lasting legacy of his departed friend from any greedy opportunists trying to steal his property. You must watch this file very carefully and keep it extremely safe because you are only allowed to release it when those people push you to the absolute brink, he said. Then, without saying another unnecessary word, he turned his computer monitor toward my side of the desk and plugged the silver drive into the available port. A media player opened on the bright screen, revealing the incredibly familiar and deeply comforting face of the man who had practically raised me. Seeing his gentle smile again after missing him so much made it extremely difficult for me to breathe properly in that quiet room. I was so moved by the unending, unconditional love and brilliant foresight my grandfather had covertly planned to ensure my future long after his physical departure, that I was unable to control the tears that were streaming down my face as I watched the enigmatic 4-2-second recording play out on the glowing monitor. He was fully aware of the dark, greedy nature that his own biological children and their favorite daughter, Brooke Harper, harbored, as the very touching short video demonstrated. He always knew exactly what they would do to me, so he made sure to protect me in his own clever way. I hurriedly wiped my wet cheeks and whispered to the utterly silent screen, then carefully ejected the silver USB drive from the computer terminal and tucked it safely into the deepest zippered pocket of my leather purse, its metallic weight an impregnable barrier against the storm. My family members were actively preparing to unleash on me. At that moment, I made the decision to strictly adhere to the extremely wise advice given by the seasoned legal professional sitting across from me in order to ensure my ultimate victory. Despite the overwhelming wave of furious anger that was boiling inside my chest toward my dishonest parents, the perfect revenge against those who foolishly underestimated my fierce independence and silent resilience depended on maintaining the element of surprise. I thanked Mr. Whitaker for his unwavering loyalty to our family and then quietly left the heavily wood-paneled office to reintegrate into the busy afternoon crowds outside. When I returned to the hotly contested house later that night, I managed to keep up my false front of complete emotional defeat as I walked silently through the empty, dark hallways, purposefully spending the entire night quietly going through my most important personal documents and carefully packing a few essentials into a duffel bag that was hidden in my closet. 3 days later, my family's extremely brittle facade of patience was officially shattered when Brooke Harper daringly unlocked the front door and strode straight into my living room, placing herself in the exact center of the room with her hands firmly on her hips to deliver her incredibly haughty ultimatum. With an infuriating smirk on her utterly unconcerned face, she maliciously spat, "You have exactly 72 hours to pack your bags and get out of here, or I will personally throw everything you own into the garbage dump. Her overwhelming sense of entitlement filled the quiet room, making the air feel oppressively heavy and suffocating to breathe. Almost immediately after her extremely hostile physical invasion, my cell phone started ringing nonstop with consecutive calls from my parents, who were obviously planning this violent ambush, and they relentlessly barraged me with extremely harsh words and highly toxic psychological manipulation that was intended to break my spirit for good. They deliberately prevented a deeply traumatized woman from finding the necessary peace and healing by aggressively twisting the story to make me appear like an extremely selfish monster. The constant onslaught of intense emotional abuse was obviously meant to force me to leave the premises far sooner than they had demanded during our previous suffocating meeting. Instead of vehemently arguing or retaliating against their absurd demands, as I would normally have done in the past, I purposefully chose to put on a very convincing theatrical performance, despite their constant accusations that my stubbornness was actively destroying the family unit while conveniently ignoring their own unforgivable treachery. As I obediently accepted their utterly unreasonable conditions, I swallowed my burning pride and pretended to have a complete mental breakdown, sobbing into the phone receiver. And this well-planned submission was the ideal smoke screen to conceal the devastating legal trap I was currently preparing to spring on them very soon. With a purposefully trembling voice that skillfully concealed my true steely resolve, I responded through the speaker, "I completely understand your perspective. So I will move out on my own to restore peace to our family." They felt tremendously triumphant upon hearing my phony, tearful surrender because they truly thought their extremely toxic bullying tactics had successfully crushed my defiant spirit. Seeing Brooke Harper turn around and march out the front door with a deeply satisfied smile on her face confirmed that they had completely dropped their guard against me. They conceitedly believed that a broken woman sobbing miserably over the phone posed no further threat to their grandiose, self-serving plans for my beloved grandfather's property, and they audibly sighed with massive relief over the phone line, believing the exhausting battle for the property was finally over. As soon as her car vanished down the street, my best friend Samantha Reed quietly pulled her rented moving truck up to the remote back entrance of the house to offer immediate physical assistance. They probably imagined me sitting alone on the living room floor, sobbing helplessly into my hands while slowly packing my belongings in complete agonizing defeat. Without asking any unnecessary questions about the sudden chaos, she hurried inside with an extremely determined expression, ready to assist me in carrying out my quick escape plan. Without wasting any time or creating any unnecessary noise that might unintentionally alert the nosy neighbors next door, we immediately synchronized our physical efforts to begin a highly efficient moving operation. Samantha Reed was a true lifesaver as we quickly moved bulky cardboard boxes and securely moved all of my personal belongings out of the hotly contested house in the late afternoon. Each item we moved, symbolizing another severing of the bonds with the extremely toxic individuals who had so readily thrown away my years of devoted loyalty. I desperately needed to disappear entirely from their sight before they could possibly devise any more cunning schemes or try to thwart my carefully orchestrated quiet escape from the poisonous surroundings. So, we worked together harmoniously to methodically clear out my assigned living areas and fill the moving vehicle to the brim before the dark evening shadows began to descend over the peaceful residential neighborhood. The next morning, just as I was settling into my seat on the commuter train, rolling steadily toward my workplace, my phone screen suddenly lit up with a freezing cold message. It felt so liberating to lock the heavy back door for the last time, knowing that they were currently celebrating a completely fake victory while I secretly held the ultimate winning hand safely hidden in my pocket. Normally, the train car's rhythmic swaying offered a serene setting, but today I was completely focused on my lit screen, which prominently displayed a brutal text message from Brooke Harper that read, "Goodbye. Everything is in the trash." Before my mind could comprehend her cruel statement completely, my hand was aggressively vibrated by another notification. In response to her favorite daughter's cruel announcement, Mom sent a demeaning photo to our shared group chat right away. It showed a pitiful pile of random old clothes and useless junk that had been carelessly thrown into a dirty green dumpster just outside the property line. A few seconds later, when another notification chimed loudly, I watched in complete disbelief as Dad casually reacted to that degrading garbage photograph by dropping a bright red heart emoji directly onto the image. It was clear that they assumed I had left all my valuable belongings behind during my phony, tearful departure the previous evening. That little digital symbol was the ultimate, indisputable evidence of his total enthusiastic agreement with kicking his own flesh and blood out onto the merciless street. He was actively celebrating the brutal destruction of my personal sanctuary without displaying the slightest trace of parental regret or basic human decency. Their well-planned cyber attack was obviously intended to destroy what little dignity I still had while establishing their absolute control over my alleged helpless suffering. I did not cry a tear when I was cruelly exiled from the very people who were meant to defend me without conditions. Instead, I just smiled with a deep sense of liberating calmness, and instead of going through the heartbreaking heartbreak they so desperately wanted to inflict on me, I casually opened the secure digital folder deep within my device storage and carefully selected the highly classified 4:2-second video file, and then, with a single purposeful tap of my thumb, I uploaded the secret recording straight into our toxic family group chat without attaching any explanation text. I calmly watched the small circular loading bar fill up completely before the application officially confirmed the successful media delivery to all participants. That incredibly brief digital upload immediately shattered their entire pathetic illusion of absolute authority and completely destroyed the arrogant pride they had boldly displayed just moments earlier. It felt like hitting that particular send button, which was like successfully detonating a massive hidden time bomb right underneath their carefully constructed castle of greedy lies. They were finally forced to witness the undeniable legal reality my grandfather had covertly arranged to legally protect me from their raging financial hunger. At precisely 5 minutes after the application displayed the official scene status indicator, their incredibly arrogant attitude shifted 180 degrees, and the profound peace of my morning commute was violently interrupted when my cellular device began ringing uncontrollably with an endless stream of incoming calls. I silently stared at the glowing screen while patiently waiting for the inevitable read receipts to appear beneath the uploaded video thumbnail image. The other passengers sitting nearby, trying to enjoy their quiet morning routines, stared at my phone in confusion as it continued to buzz loudly. 53 panicked missed calls quickly filled my screen as they tried desperately to reach the woman they had just gleefully thrown away. When dialing my number repeatedly failed to produce any successful connection, Dad quickly resorted to recording a very frantic audio message. As his voice reverberated through the device speaker, his once supreme confidence dripping from his earlier heart emoji was completely replaced by a pitiful trembling fear of impending legal and financial consequences. "Answer the phone right now, Natalie Harper, because we urgently need to seriously discuss this terrible misunderstanding." After listening to his sudden, frantic pleas, I was even more convinced than ever that carrying out this ruthless retaliation was the right course of action for my own survival, and I icily put my cell phone in airplane mode to permanently stop their frantic graveling before returning my focus to the passing cityscape. That same afternoon, their complete panic quickly turned into a completely insane physical attack right inside my corporate office lobby, and the rushing scenery outside the train window perfectly matched the incredible forward momentum of my completely irreversible escape from their deeply toxic grip. Mom and Dad, both of whom had extremely flushed red faces, were right behind Brooke Harper as she loudly marched through the revolving glass doors and angrily approached the front reception desk, attracting the attention of several busy professionals passing through the open atrium. "That damn video is completely worthless," Brooke Harper yelled at the top of her lungs for everyone to hear, completely disregarding fundamental public decorum. "Therefore, don't even consider threatening us or stealing my property with it." Her embarrassing public outburst reverberated loudly off the marble walls, causing several of my coworkers to stop and look in complete disbelief as she screamed and pointed a violently shaking finger directly at my face. Rather than participating in a demeaning yelling match that matched her intensely erratic energy, I remained completely composed and unconcerned, picking up the lobby phone and firmly ordering the building security team to escort these disruptive trespassers off the business property right away. Upon witnessing the security personnel physically escort my deeply enraged family members toward the sliding exit doors, Brooke Harper was profoundly humiliated and suddenly realized her immense public embarrassment. Two tall, uniformed guards quickly arrived at the scene and gave a firm order for them to leave the corporate building. She was enraged beyond all reasonable reasoning and basic logic after being thrown out in front of dozens of my staring professional colleagues. In a fit of irrational rage and a desperate desire for instant public vengeance, Brooke Harper lost all self-control she had left. She sat irate in her parked car and quickly posted an extremely lengthy manifesto on several well-known social media sites, vilely distorting the unavoidable truth of our predicament by portraying herself as the ultimate tragic victim of my alleged greed. By falsely accusing me of being a manipulative fraud who ruthlessly stole valuable assets directly from a recently deceased family member, she publicly defamed my character. The highly inflammatory post was intended to destroy my personal reputation and incite a hateful mob mentality against me within our local community network. Thankfully, Samantha Reed showed her remarkable digital acumen by spotting the malicious online publication almost immediately after it went live on the internet, avoiding any needless consolation, and concentrating solely on protecting the extremely sensitive digital evidence. Before Brooke Harper could possibly realize her grave legal error and remove the post, Samantha Reed painstakingly archived every single digital footprint into a secure cloud storage folder, taking high-resolution screenshots of the entire defamatory essay, and carefully extracting the permanent web link straight from the application platform. Getting hold of this indisputable evidence of malevolent public deception gave me the precise ammunition I needed to obliterate their haughty defense strategy. I promptly sent the extensive digital dossier that Samantha Reed had put together straight to Mr. Whitaker for his prompt professional legal review, and after reading the extremely damaging online publication, he promptly called my cell phone to discuss our extremely aggressive next course of action. They have formally gone beyond the bounds of the law. Through the receiver, Mr. Whitaker confidently confirmed that these carefully preserved defamatory materials were more than sufficient to constitute a highly serious civil crime, saying, "So now is the time we counterattack with the full force of the law to teach them a permanent lesson." Equipped with a mountain of extremely solid digital evidence and the legally binding 4-2-second recording, I met with my veteran lawyer the next morning. His seasoned legal expertise validated my strategic patience and gave me the final green light to proceed with my devastating retaliation. Through the official filing of a massive civil lawsuit in the South Carolina state court system, which specifically targeted all of their illegal actions, we were able to lock down all remaining escape routes for the vicious individuals who had ruthlessly trampled over me. The comprehensive legal filing included serious charges of intentional defamation of character along with their fraudulent attempts to illegally claim my rightful property. After 4 torturous months of exhausting legal proceedings, the heavy oak doors of the state courtroom finally swung open, and the atmosphere inside the formal judicial chamber felt incredibly suffocating as we took our assigned seats across the aisle from each other. They were finally going to face the terrifying wrath of the American justice system without any chance of manipulating their way out. The opposing legal counsel steadfastly clung to their completely absurd foundational argument that my grandfather had died without ever establishing any legally binding testament. Brooke Harper sat confidently next to her parents, wearing a very haughty expression that made it obvious that she was absolutely certain of winning. Their whole legal defense was based on the blatantly false assumption that I had no tangible documentary evidence to successfully contest their hostile takeover of my property, and they were constantly whispering among themselves and glaring at me in general across the silent, polished wooden floor. When Mr. Whitaker formally asked the presiding judge for permission to present our main digital exhibit, the much-anticipated trial climax burst into reality, and a huge television monitor was swiftly rolled into the very center of the silent courtroom so that everyone in attendance could see the unquestionable truth. The suffocating tension in the room was shattered when the renowned 4:2-second video file officially started playing loudly over the sophisticated speaker system, revealing a crystal-clear image of my grandfather sitting comfortably in his favorite leather armchair and appearing remarkably lucid. My granddaughter has absolute authority to manage or utilize or even sell this house to donate the proceeds to charity if she no longer needs it without anyone being permitted to interfere. He looked directly into the camera lens with intense absolute clarity to formally declare his permanent transfer of the disputed real estate property solely into my name. The smug smiles that had previously adorned the faces of my avaricious relatives were completely erased by the power of his recorded voice. His booming voice reverberated throughout the courtroom, and as the brief recording officially came to an end, everyone in the room was frozen in stunned silence. Brooke Harper, looking paler, sank deeper into her wooden chair, realizing that her carefully crafted web of avaricious lies was coming undone in front of a federal judge. In their obstinate minds, Mom and Dad exchanged deeply panicked looks as the unavoidable reality of their imminent catastrophic legal failure finally set in. They had naively believed that a legally recorded declaration could be magically erased by deleting a few digital text messages or yelling aloud in a public lobby. Immediately following the end of the video presentation, Mr. Whitaker ascended the official witness stand to deliver the final blow to their defense, showcasing the original notarized last will and certified financial documents that proved my sole rightful ownership of the highly contested historic estate. However, the seasoned attorney did not stop there, as he also unveiled a massive stack of heavily verified bank statements that detailed numerous unauthorized financial transactions. These shocking secondary documents unequivocally demonstrated that my grandfather's parents had secretly embezzled large sums of valuable liquid assets during his last vulnerable months, sabotaging his private savings accounts while I was totally preoccupied with the daily medical care he required. Mr. Whitaker aggressively questioned my parents, pointing to the indisputable financial evidence. You shamelessly exploited his severe illness to illegally embezzle tens of thousands of dollars from a deceased man's retirement account before daring to stand here claiming to be the innocent victims, he said. The presiding judge violently struck her heavy wooden gavel against the sounding block to formally announce her final binding verdict in my absolute favor, leaving them utterly stunned as they frantically searched for any rational justification for their well-documented financial crimes. She specifically directed my legally defeated family members to return all stolen financial assets immediately and to pay large civil penalties to make up for their malicious campaign of defamation against my professional reputation. Brooke Harper and my parents both fell in their seats, completely devastated by the realization that every single vicious lie had been brutally revealed to the world. 3 months after that fateful trial, the disastrous effects of their merciless deeds were evident and irrevocable, and they were taken out of the judicial building by armed bailiffs bearing the heavy burden of their own hungry devastation. After reading the publicly available court transcripts detailing her actual verified crimes, the local online community immediately launched a massive digital boycott against Brooke Harper, and the extremely malicious social media post she had hastily published completely backfired against her in the most spectacularly destructive way possible. She lost her lucrative career overnight, and she also became a social outcast in the very community she was trying so hard to influence emotionally, after her corporate employer quickly learned of the viral controversy and officially fired her on the spot, citing serious violations of standard professional ethics. In addition to facing enormous financial compensations ordered by the presiding federal judge, Mom and Dad lost their frantic legal battle to secure the historic property, and she was blacklisted from her entire professional industry for good, making it nearly impossible for her to ever land another cozy, well-paying corporate job. In order to pay the extremely steep restitution payments, they were legally forced to sell their own primary residence at a huge loss, and the substantial profits from their hurried property sale were used exclusively to pay back the retirement funds they had secretly embezzled from my late grandfather in his last vulnerable months. My avaricious parents, who had traded their comfortable, secure retirement for total financial ruin simply because they could not control their deeply unnatural, overwhelming greed when looking at his property, found themselves suddenly homeless and completely bankrupt, experiencing the exact same terrifying displacement they had originally planned for me. Please forgive us because we are still your family, and we desperately need your help to survive right now, Dad fervently begged in a very pitiful audio message as they repeatedly left me pathetic, sobbing voicemails pleading for immediate financial assistance and emotional reconciliation in an attempt to re-establish contact. I firmly decided to permanently cut off all biological ties with people who were blinded by pure unadulterated greed, so I coldly deleted every single desperate voicemail without replying. They had voluntarily sacrificed their own basic humanity for short-term financial gain, so they definitely deserved to suffer their self-inflicted misery in complete solitude. In order to keep any more unwanted psychological harassment from interfering with my peaceful, self-directed healing process, I formally blocked their phone numbers. In strict adherence to my grandfather's incredibly noble final wishes, I spent the rest of my weekend completely renovating the stunning historic memorial house. After the necessary interior repairs were successfully finished, I formally turned over the full usage rights to a reputable local charity that operated in the city, a particular philanthropic organization that specialized in providing safe emergency housing for homeless children who were displaced and in dire need of a safe, nurturing environment to properly heal. My beloved grandfather would have been immensely proud to see his beloved property changing from a twisted prize for greedy adults to a beacon of hope for innocent children, and knowing that his treasured home would actively protect vulnerable youth brought a great sense of profound peace to my previously burdened heart. Putting that extremely painful past behind me, I packed the last of my belongings in order to leave the cobblestone streets of Charleston forever, and I bought a one-way plane ticket to a state that was entirely different in order to start a new chapter of complete freedom and unbroken peace and quiet. Walking away from toxic relatives allowed me to finally build a beautiful independent life free from their suffocating emotional manipulation and endless selfish demands, And as I watched the historic city skyline slowly fade away through the small airplane window, I felt absolutely no regrets about my extremely difficult but ultimately necessary decision. As I look forward to a bright future where true love truly meant something real and unconditionally supportive, I confidently close the darkest chapter of my life. By closely examining Natalie Harper's amazing survival journey, we can draw several important conclusions about navigating toxic family dynamics. Firstly, sharing biological blood does not automatically guarantee genuine loyalty from the relatives who are supposed to protect you. To successfully protect your emotional health from manipulative family members, you must set clear personal boundaries. Secondly, your most effective defense against dishonest people attempting to control you is to remain strategically silent during a heated argument. When you finally tell them the truth, carefully assembling indisputable, tangible evidence will always defeat their aggressive yelling. Third, true healing officially begins the moment you permanently cut off their deeply toxic access to your peaceful reality. The most fulfilling form of retaliation is creating a beautiful, independent life far away from the people who attempted to break you. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this amazing true story. We sincerely appreciate your unwavering support and incredible daily devotion to our expanding channel. If your own biological family had betrayed you so brutally for financial gain, how would you have responded legally? Please share your personal thoughts in the comments section below. We always enjoy hearing your insightful viewpoints.